The audiologist booth is the most expensive room in medicine. You sit in a soundproof chamber, wear headphones, press a button when you hear a beep, and walk out with a prescription for a device that costs more than a used car. $6,000, $8,000 in some markets, and the entire process is designed to make you feel that buying anything less than what the audiologist sells in their office is gambling with your hearing. That illusion is cracking. In 2022, the FDA created the over-the-counter hearing aid category, allowing hearing aids to be sold directly to consumers with mild to moderate hearing loss, without a prescription, without an audiologist, and without the $6,000 office markup. Overnight, the same semiconductor companies that build chips for premium clinic brands started selling those chips to consumer electronics companies, and those consumer companies built hearing aids that perform within 5 to 10% of clinic devices for 1/10 of the price. The audiologist industry fought this change for years because the hearing aid is not where their profit lives. The profit lives in the fitting, the follow-up, the cleaning visits, the adjustment sessions, and the lifetime of office visits bundled into one massive number. Remove the office visits, and the $6,000 price collapses to $500. Here is what nobody says out loud about over-the-counter hearing aids. The technology inside a premium clinic hearing aid and the technology inside a $300 over-the-counter hearing aid are closer than the industry wants you to believe. Both use digital signal processing chips from the same handful of manufacturers. Both use directional microphones, noise reduction algorithms, and feedback cancellation. Both use Bluetooth for streaming audio from phones and televisions. The difference is the fitting model. The clinic hearing aid is programmed to the exact audiogram of the specific ear. The over-the-counter hearing aid is programmed by the user through an app that walks them through a self-assessment. For mild to moderate hearing loss, that self-assessment is within 5% of a clinical fitting on standardized speech and noise tests. 5%. The industry charges $6,000 for a 5% improvement in fitting accuracy, and most users cannot perceive that difference in real-world conversations. Here are 5 cheap hearing aid brands that everyone ignores, but that are absolute gold mines because the technology is real, the FDA has cleared them, and the price is honest. Number 5. Audien. Start with the one that proves the entire point. Audien is a direct-to-consumer brand that sells FDA-cleared hearing aids for under $200. The Audien Atom is the best-selling over-the-counter hearing aid on the market by volume, and it costs $199 per pair. It is a completely in-canal design, meaning the entire hearing aid sits inside the ear canal and is invisible from the outside. The sound processing uses a basic digital chip that amplifies speech frequencies while reducing background noise. It is not as sophisticated as the multi-channel processing in a $6,000 aid. But the question is not whether the $6,000 aid is better. The question is whether it is 30 times better. And the answer for mild hearing loss, the answer is no. But for someone with mild hearing loss who has been refusing to get hearing aids because of the cost and the stigma, the Atom removes every barrier. No appointment, no audiologist, no $6,000 invoice, and the device is small enough that no one sees it. The Audien also ships with 4 different silicone ear tips in different sizes, which is important because a hearing aid that does not seal properly in the ear canal produces feedback, the whistling sound that makes people stop wearing hearing aids in public. The correct ear tip creates a seal that prevents amplified sound from leaking back to the microphone. A poor seal means the hearing aid whistles. Audien includes the tips for free, where premium clinic brands charge $50 for replacement ear tip sets. The battery is rechargeable via USB-C and lasts 24 hours per charge. The tell is the price. When a $199 hearing aid is FDA cleared and sells by the millions, the $6,000 clinic model is not selling better technology. It is selling the fitting room. Number 4. Lexi. Lexi is the brand that built its entire product around the self-fitting app. The Lexi Buds pair with a smartphone application that walks the user through a guided hearing assessment in their own home. The app plays tones at different frequencies, the user taps the screen when they hear each tone, and the software generates a hearing profile that programs the hearing aids automatically. The entire process takes 15 minutes. For someone who has been putting off getting hearing aids because the clinic process feels intimidating, Lexi removes the barrier entirely. The Lexi Buds also include a feature called environment recognition that detects whether the user is in a quiet room, a noisy restaurant, or a large gathering, and adjusts the microphone directionality accordingly. In a restaurant, the hearing aid focuses forward to amplify the person sitting across the table while suppressing the clatter of dishes and conversation from behind. That directional processing is the same fundamental technology used in clinic hearing aids, and it is the feature that determines whether a hearing aid actually helps in noise or just makes everything louder. The Lexi Buds sell for $999 per pair and offer Bluetooth streaming from both Apple and Android, rechargeable batteries, and a feature called Lexi Expert that connects the user with a real hearing consultant via telehealth for remote adjustments. That combination of self-fitting plus human remote support bridges the gap between a drugstore amplifier and a full clinical fitting. The Tell is the app. A hearing aid that programs itself through a phone app is not a lesser product. It is a different distribution model for people whose hearing loss does not require clinical intervention. Number 3. Jabra Enhanced Select. Jabra is owned by GN Audio, the same Danish company that builds ReSound hearing aids. The Enhanced Select is the over-the-counter version of the ReSound platform, and it uses the same digital signal processing chip. The Enhanced Select offers directional microphones that focus on the speaker in front of the user while suppressing noise from the sides and behind. It includes noise reduction algorithms that identify and reduce steady-state background noise, like refrigerators, air conditioners, and road traffic. And it offers direct Bluetooth streaming for phone calls, music, and television audio. The price for the Enhanced Select is $1,200 to $1,500 per pair, depending on the model. The ReSound equivalent in a clinic runs $3,000 to $5,000 per pair. And the same parent company builds both products on the same chip, the technology is identical, and the price difference is entirely the distribution model. The Tell is the chip. A hearing aid that shares its processing architecture with a device that costs 3 times as much is not a compromise. It is the same product sold through a different door. The Enhanced Select also includes a 4D sensor that detects when the wearer is moving and when they are stationary, switching between omnidirectional listening on the move and directional focus when seated. This motion adaptive behavior is controlled by the same chip that runs the ReSound platform, meaning the over-the-counter buyer gets the full premium feature set at roughly 1/4 of the clinic price. Number 2. Eargo. Eargo built its brand on design. The Eargo hearing aids are completely in canal, meaning they sit inside the ear canal and are invisible. But unlike the Audien, Eargo uses a more advanced sound processing platform with multiple channels that adjust independently based on the listening environment. Eargo also includes a feature called Sound Adjust that automatically detects whether the user is in a quiet room, a noisy restaurant, or a conversation with multiple speakers, and changes the processing profile without the user touching anything. Eargo charges $1,500 to $2,500 per pair depending on the model. That is more expensive than the other brands on this list, but it is still less than half the cost of a comparable clinic device with similar multi-channel processing. The Tell is the design. Hearing aid that a user is willing to wear every day is the only hearing aid that works. Eargo focused on making the device invisible and comfortable, because the single biggest reason people abandon hearing aids is vanity. 30% of hearing aids end up in a drawer, and the reason is almost always that the user did not want to be seen wearing one. When a brand solves the vanity problem and delivers multi-channel processing at half the clinic price, the user actually wears the device. Eargo also offers a telehealth support service that connects the user with a licensed hearing professional through the app for remote adjustments. If the self-fitting does not sound right, a real human can tune the device remotely without the user ever visiting a clinic. That hybrid model of self-fitting plus human remote support is what bridges the gap between a disposable amplifier and a $6,000 clinical fitting. Number 1. Sony Cree E10. The single best over-the-counter hearing aid value in 2026 is the Sony Cree E10. Sony entered the hearing aid market in partnership with WS Audiology, the parent company of Signia, which is one of the top 3 premium hearing aid manufacturers in the world. The Cree E10 uses the same Signia sound processing engine that powers clinic devices costing $4,000 to $6,000 per pair. It includes a feature called Acoustic Situational Support that uses artificial intelligence to analyze the sound environment and apply the optimal processing settings in real time. The AI has been trained on millions of real-world sound scenes, and it adapts continuously as the user moves between environments. It also includes direct Bluetooth audio streaming, rechargeable batteries with 26 hours of runtime, and a self-fitting app that uses the same guided assessment process as the Lexi. The price for the Sony Cree E10 is $1,000 to $1,300 per pair. A Signia hearing aid with the same AI processing engine in a clinic runs $4,000 to $6,000 per pair. The difference is the door you walk through. Sony and Signia literally share the chip, the algorithm, and the AI model. The only difference is whether you buy it from an audiologist or from a retailer. The Sony also includes a feature called face-to-face enhancement that isolates the voice of the person directly in front of the wearer and boosts it above all other sound sources. In a crowded room with multiple conversations, that feature is what determines whether the wearer can participate or simply nods and pretends to hear. Signia charges $4,000 for the same algorithm in a clinic. Sony charges $1,000 for it over the counter. When a company puts its premium AI engine into an over-the-counter device at 1/4 of the clinic price, the technology gap between clinic and consumer is officially zero. So those are the 5 gold mines. Now the one mistake that prevents most people from finding them, the audiologist trap. You walk into a clinic because your hearing is declining. The audiologist runs a hearing test, generates an audiogram, and recommends a specific hearing aid. The recommendation is always for a device the clinic sells. The clinic earns revenue from the device sale and the fitting services bundled into the price. In some states, the audiologist earns a commission on each hearing aid sold, meaning the recommendation is not purely medical. It is also financial. A clinic that sells Signia hearing aids will never recommend a Sony over-the-counter device, even though both use the same chip. The audiologist will not mention over-the-counter options because the clinic does not sell them, and the clinic earns nothing if you buy a Sony from a retailer instead of a Signia from them. Here is the truth. An audiogram is not proprietary information. It is your medical data. You have the right to take your audiogram to any retailer and use it to program any hearing aid, including over-the-counter models. Some over-the-counter apps even allow you to manually input an audiogram for a more precise fitting than the self-assessment alone. The tell is simple. If an audiologist tells you that over-the-counter hearing aids are dangerous or inadequate without asking about your specific degree of hearing loss, they are protecting their revenue, not your ears. Over-the-counter hearing aids are FDA cleared for mild to moderate loss. If your loss is severe or profound, you need a clinic device. But the vast majority of people buying hearing aids for the first time have mild to moderate loss, and for them, the over-the-counter market offers equivalent technology at a fraction of the cost. The second trap is the amplifier deception. Walk into any pharmacy and you will see racks of personal sound amplifiers for $30 to $60. These are not hearing aids, they are PSAPs, personal sound amplification products, and they make everything louder without distinguishing between speech and noise. A PSAP is a megaphone for your ear. It drowns speech and amplified background noise. The FDA specifically created the over-the-counter hearing aid category to separate real hearing aids from these amplifiers, and every device on this list is FDA cleared as a real hearing aid, not a PSAP. The distinction matters because a PSAP can worsen hearing by over-amplifying sounds already within range. The FDA created the over-the-counter hearing aid category specifically to distinguish real hearing aids with digital signal processing from these amplifiers. An FDA cleared over-the-counter hearing aid processes sound. A PSAP makes it louder. The third thing everyone gets wrong is assuming that cheap means disposable. Here is what actually breaks on a hearing aid: the speaker wire. The thin wire that connects the processor behind the ear to the speaker inside the ear canal is the single most common point of failure on every hearing aid ever made, regardless of price. The wire fatigues from daily use and eventually needs replacement. On a $6,000 clinic aid, the replacement costs $150 at the audiologist office. On an over-the-counter aid, the replacement costs $20 online and takes 2 minutes to swap. The hearing aid processor itself, the chip that does the actual sound processing, has a lifespan measured in decades. It does not wear out from normal use. The battery degrades, the speaker wire fatigues, and the ear tip degrades, but the processor keeps running. When the 3 consumable parts cost $40 total to replace, and the processor lasts 10 years, the total cost of ownership of an over-the-counter hearing aid over a decade is less than a single visit to the audiologist. The part that fails is the cheapest part to replace on every device. That is the whole point of this list. The hearing aid with a replaceable speaker wire and a self-programming app outlasts the clinic model because the technology is the same and the replacement parts are universal. Judge the chip, not the price. Buy the brand that shares its processor with a clinic device. And when the difference between hearing your grandchildren and not hearing them is $1,000 instead of $6,000, never let an audiogram keep you from a door that sells the same exact chip for less.